Hello everyone, welcome back to This Is Why We Stand on Westchester Talk Radio. I'm Joe Archino and we are broadcasting live from Scarsdale Ford. Our show is made possible by Entergy Indian Point Energy Center, MSM Designs, Game Sportswear, and of course we couldn't do it without our host Scarsdale Ford. We are produced by Shark Creative, and once again we are joined by Ken Kraetzer. Ken, second time in a row you're with us. Really appreciate you coming down again.
Oh, sure. It's great to chat with you. You're doing a great job of the show. You had some great guests on I listened to before this morning. The woman from the Marine Corps.
Oh, Gail.
And the Honor Flight program.
Absolutely.
Terrific job. And interesting to hear about their upcoming schedule to go to Washington in October. From Westchester. Those are amazing opportunities. I know one of the things that's neat, they say oftentimes they see Senator Bob Dole at the World War II Memorial greeting the honor flights that are coming through on those special days. And I remember the World War II monument being built. Actually, where I'm on a committee that's working to update the chaplains' monuments at Arlington National Cemetery. In 2011, we worked with the Jewish war veterans to donate the Jewish chaplains' monument. And we're working right now to update the Protestant chaplains' monument. They had 25 names of chaplains lost in service in Korea, Vietnam, Cold War, and post 9/11. And then our big plan is to build a walkway there that would enable access. Chaplain's Hill is up about 25 feet from the roadway in Section 2, and we want to build a walkway so, as we say, we can provide access to scout groups, honor flights. So that's one of our things that we do.
Well, and that's the thing, Ken, is you really do so much, and everyone who comes on our show is family, and I consider you part of the show family now. With everything you do, I mean, you're going to be hard to get a hold of pretty soon with Army football coming up and everything else you've got going on. But let's talk a little bit about Army football, what's coming up for you. You've covered the program for a while now. The program's been tremendously successful the last couple seasons. What would you say has been the biggest change that you've seen from a couple seasons ago to where they are now, really at the height of their power?
Well, Jeff Monken, when he came aboard, coming in from Georgia Southern, he made a reputation because he managed to win a game at Florida that year, and he is just the most organized guy you could imagine. He is intense. He is an epitome of a leader. He gets, in a college football program, you got about 125 to 150 people between the players and the trainers and the scouts and the equipment guys, everybody else, plus the administration. And he does a great job of keeping everybody going in the right direction all the time, every single day. And so he had 2 rough years starting out, but then his recruits started to play. And they just have had 2 terrific seasons, culminated with beating Navy in 2016 after having lost to them 14 games in a row. The Academy just was beside itself. They were so excited with that win. And then last year, they went out to the Air Force Academy, a team that had beaten them badly at Mikey Stadium the year before, and they won 21-0 there in Colorado Springs. And then they came back in Philadelphia, an epic game between the 2 schools. Navy scored in the 4th quarter, and then Army had to score, and then Navy had the ball again with about a minute to play. They go the length of the field, but they get 2 offside penalties.
Wow.
When you're down at the 25-yard line, 35 seconds to play, and you go offside twice. So they end up having to kick a field goal from, I think it was 45, 48 yards on a snowy field. It's snowing pretty hard. And it's an epic football environment. And I'm on the 20-yard line because we always go on the field to take video of the alma maters at the game. So I go down with about 5 minutes to play, stand on the 20-yard line, and the Corps of Cadets is on one side of the field, all 4,000 of them. They're yelling at the top of their lungs. Brigade of Midshipmen is on the other corner of the field, the 4,000 of them, they're yelling at the top of their lungs. Everybody, the 70,000 people in the stadium, they're yelling at the top of their lungs. And this kid for Navy goes out to try and kick a 48-yard field goal, and he misses by 6 inches. And the way I couldn't see the ball because it's snowing, I couldn't see it past the goalpost, but you knew because the Army side of the field erupted and the Navy side of the field went dead quiet. And it's just amazing. And the kids on the team, and we got a chance to meet the Navy players too. We go down to their media day. In fact, I hope maybe you'll join us this year. It's usually the Wednesday, 10 days before the Army-Navy game. And we talked to the Navy players, the captains, and their coach, Ken Kraetzer, who's a terrific guy.
Yeah, he's a great coach, too. I mean, you talk about another guy who's turned his program and done some tremendous things. Him, too.
Yeah, no, he's terrific guys. He and Jeff Monken coached together at Navy. Kenny Amadalolo was promoted, I guess it was 10, 12 years ago, and has had a phenomenal run of success there. Tough guy, but the same as Jeff Monken, very, very organized, great leader. And they've had great players there at Navy. And, it's interesting now because Army's beaten them 2 years in a row, and the Navy folks are going to get pretty hungry.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm thinking about maybe going out of their media day and saying, is this something you talk about every day? We've lost to Army 2 years in a row. We cannot do this again. We must win in December this year. And there's just nowhere else probably in sports. I mean, Michigan, Ohio State's a little bit like that, some of the other big rivalries, but there's still nothing where two schools are so intense rivalries as Army and Navy.
Well, I would just go and ask you that, actually, because you've covered a lot of sports. You've really seen a lot of stuff. Is there anything you think that's comparable to watching Army take on Navy? I mean, the tradition, the meaning behind both programs, what both teams are going to do after they're done playing. I mean, I can't think of much else.
Well, it's unique, and I've been to 2 Super Bowls, been very fortunate, and the Army-Navy game is beyond the Super Bowl, especially if you're there because it's more about there than the Super Bowl is, which is about a TV show largely, amongst also being a great football game. But the Army-Navy, there's so many traditions before the game. It's one of those things that they're looking forward to all year. And there are competitions. The night before, they have a debate team match between the two schools. I think there's 20 different competitions in different sports, club sports, before the game. And they run a football from each academy to the game site by the marathon teams. There's bonfires before the game. And then, all sorts of traditions. At each school, there's usually about a half a dozen exchange students from the other school each semester. So the 7 or 8 students from Navy who are at Army and the 7 or 8 students from Navy who are at the Naval Academy through the semester, they get marched out by their first captain or brigade commander, and they consider it a POW exchange. And and they exchange them so the cadets can sit on and the midshipmen can sit on their own side of the field for the game. And just, the bands. And then, of course, the march on. First, Army marches out on the field, and not quite all 4,000, but pretty close in their 36 company formations. We saw the first captain, Sinead Askew, was out on the field leading them and gives the commands, and they do a couple of cheers. And it's a big day for the parents who were there, the seniors, and then the brigade goes out and does the same thing behind their leadership, and it's incredibly impressive. But the intensity of the game, I mean, they remember it's their game that the seniors are remembered for, whether they beat Army or if Navy, beats Army or Army beats Navy. They remember it. That's their legacy for their career.
Very well said. Ken, big season ahead, obviously. What are you expecting from Army this year?
Well, I think they're going to have another successful season. The big thing is they got to break in a new quarterback. At a spring practice, it looked like Kelvin Hopkins, Jr., was the leader in taking over from Ahmad Bradshaw, who has just gone down as one of the best players, probably the best player in Army football in the past 25 years in his leadership at a quarterback running the option. But I think it's going to be Kelvin Hopkins. They tried Kel Walker, who is a running back, who usually takes a pitch play in the triple option offense. They tried him at quarterback in the spring game. I didn't see he seemed to struggle because it's really quick decision making on whether you give it to the fullback, you run it yourself as a quarterback, or you pitch to the trailing halfback. The 3 key options of the triple option. And they also have another quarterback who will be a senior, Luke Langdon, who's played some and is considered a quality player. And we'll see. But if they had to play tomorrow, I think Kel Hopkins would be the starting quarterback. When Army's on offense, they're really deep at fullback, starting with Darnell Wolfunk, who played last year and was named a captain of the team, Andy Davidson. They've got 4 fullbacks who can play, a number of halfbacks. The key is rebuilding the offensive line. They lost 3 seniors, but their starting center, Bryce Holland, will be back. Bryce, was the center of the past few years for the Army team this past year that led the country in rushing. #1 in Division I, Army. 360 yards a game.
That's
and he was the center, so he's back, and that helps. On defense, they lost some key players. John Boyd on the defensive line, Alex Zuckerman, who had a great career at outside linebacker, and Ryan England at safety. But they got some depth, and I think that's one of the things Jeff Monken has done a good job at, is bringing depth. Last year they had a spat of injuries and players out on the defensive backfield, and they were able to get by. For a while, Ryan England was out. He got hurt in the Ohio State game. And they were able to fill in with backup players, without too much difference. And so they got some depth. And that's one of the things Jeff Monken's brought across the team, across the roster, is recruiting. And they have depth now, which they didn't have under the prior coach, and especially on defense. So I think they're going to be strong. I mean, they got some tough games early. They start the year Labor Day Friday night down at Duke. We'll be down there for that. Last year they beat Duke at home, which was a huge win for them. And Duke's been very successful in the ACC. And then they have 2 home games against Liberty and Hawaii, which hopefully they can win. They should be a good games. Good time to come out to see them, see the Black Knights play. Then they go out to Oklahoma. Yeah, that Oklahoma, the Sooners, out in Norman, and I'm looking forward to going on that for a couple of reasons. One, they go out there because they want to play one top 10 team a year, and they were able to book. They may actually have a home with Oklahoma.
That would be very cool.
Right. As of right now, Oklahoma is scheduled to play at Michie Stadium in 2 years, and that's subject to change. They're planning some construction at Michie Stadium and rebuild the East Stands, and we'll see what happens with that game. But there'll be a lot of Army people out there because there's a bunch of Army bases in Oklahoma. Fort Sill is the home of the Field Artillery. And my dad commissioned from there, my uncle, in 1942, October 1942.
So it's got even more significance for you to go down there.
Yeah, so I'm planning to do a day trip out to Fort Sill and see it, where my dad and my uncle commissioned in 42 before they served as Army officers in World War II. Army comes back. They have to go on a road trip to Buffalo. They got a home game against the Miami of Ohio. They go out to San Jose State. Then they have Air Force coming in. And if you have a chance, that's the kind of game. I'd even sold out already. That's the game to go to. Every 2 years, Air Force comes in. Obviously, Navy's played in a neutral site. But it's very similar to the Navy game. It's not, the intensity isn't quite the same, but it's pretty close. And Army had success going out to Colorado Springs. We went out with them, and it's nice for us. We got a chance to interview veterans out there, some Army veterans from Fort Carson and Colorado Springs, some Air Force veterans. We actually interviewed the Chief of Staff of the Air Force Academy, and he kind of gave us a talk on some of their things they do educationally, training. I didn't realize that more than half the graduates of the Air Force Academy become pilots. And there's a shortage of pilots in the military right now. So that's a big thing for them. And they're one of the leading schools, if not the leader, in aeronautical engineering. And so we get a chance to hear a little bit about what they do, what's a little bit different. But a lot of it's very similar. The students all do the same high-intensity education, military training, and then many of them play varsity sports or other activities. And we actually got a chance to go watch the debate match between Army and Air Force, and that was neat to see.
I don't think there's anyone who covers Army football better than you do, and you guys do the work you do. For people who certainly are going to want to check you out this season to see everything you do, press conferences, interviews with players, game reports, you name it. Where can people find your work? Where can people go to make sure they're tuned into you for Army football this season?
Well, our big page is on Facebook, West Point Football Report. We have about 5,600 subscribers there, and we put up video there. We're privileged to talk with Jeff Monken once a week and do a video interview with him. And we're also on the conference call with him each week with questions for the coach. And then we interview 2 or 3 cadets at practice each week. And it's really neat because we try to interview some of the younger players. And, some of them are from smaller towns. And we put that on Facebook. We put it on YouTube. And all of a sudden it takes off when it gets in the Family Network. And we've gotten 10,000 page views on some of those little interviews.
Big numbers.
And, those kids who go to West Point from their high schools, they're heroes. They did something different, tougher, prestigious, and they're playing on the Army football team, Division I, that, it's playing on the big stage. And then we get a chance to meet and watch the players grow up. And the best thing for us is, we interview somebody. We notice them as a freshman. They get in a game, they make a play, and we'll ask the coach about them, and then we'll talk to them. And then they become sophomores, and they become juniors, they become leaders on the team, and then they become seniors. And some of them become captains. John Voight, we knew him for 4 years. What a great guy he was. Or Alex Zuckerman just graduated, and now they're Army officers, and they're out serving the country. And some of the guys we met, a few years ago, they're out in places, Afghanistan. We have a bunch of them were in South Korea the last couple of years. So we were able to stay in touch with them, and they're all doing extraordinary things. Some of them are going into business, some are going into education, some going into political leadership. Adam DeMarco just ran for Congress, former Army football player down in Maryland, and he's going to do great things in his career. And so it's just neat. And, we meet the academy officials. They just installed the new superintendent, General Darryl Williams, Lieutenant General, former Army football player, defensive tackle in the early 80s. And boy, we heard he was introduced on our day, and he stands behind that podium and starts speaking. And in 30 seconds why he was selected to be the superintendent of the United States Military Academy. And he's just back from a tour of duty with NATO Command in Turkey as U.S. military representative in Turkey. He's been with the Army in Europe, and he was the commander of the U.S. Army for Africa. He was assigned by President Obama to work to fight the Ebola epidemic, and was credited with saving thousands of lives by General Milley in his introduction. He also served in South Korea. So I get to meet people like that. We were in their Board of Visitors meeting last week, and we heard about what they're working on, what they're trying to build, do better. But they do a lot of things really well, academically, military training. Right now they have the freshmen doing their cadet basic training, which is very similar to what any Army soldier does in basic training. And then they have the sophomores and the juniors going through cadet field training, where they go to learn all the things that they have to do to lead a platoon in the U.S. Army. And everybody does it. I mean, it's not like, just the ones who plan to go infantry. Everybody does all those things and learns the common skills that the U.S. Army prides itself on.
Ken Kraetzer, you are a wealth of knowledge, my friend. Really appreciate the time today. We're, of course, going to be checking back with you as we get closer to the season. But thank you for your time today and just telling us everything, all this great stuff.
Well, I always say I have the best job in the American Legion covering the Army football team.
It doesn't sound much better than that. Everyone, he is Ken Kraetzer. I am Joe Archino. You're listening to This Is Why We Stand on Westchester Talk Radio. We're here at Scarsdale Ford. Don't go anywhere. We've got one more guest coming up.